computer. It's recording. Okay, let's go.
Well, welcome guys to week 2. And it's good to see you guys come back with us. We did lose a few people between the first class and town hall and tonight. And that's unfortunate. We don't like to lose anybody. But I know personally, I have to go back in and readjust some of our peer review teams and take some people off that roster or that some of those teams. But I will get that done after class this evening. Speaking of class, we're trying something very different this semester. We have always, the first 4 weeks of class, we have always come online and had class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're trying something different this time. We're only going to come on one night a week. And I hope you appreciate that. But the downside is we're going to go longer than an hour these first 4 weeks. So, hour and 15, maybe even an hour and a half, but I think that's still better than having to take 2 nights. So I hope you agree with us and I hope this works. You will be our guinea pigs as we go through this. So the first thing I want you to do is let's review our norms. If everybody, you want to pull those up, Dr. Stedman,
Let
in
me
our agenda?
let me share the screen. Yeah.
And we always try to post the weekly agenda ahead of class time. Sometimes I forget. Dr. Stedman is Johnny on the spot, though. He never forgets.
Yes, I
And
do.
so, no, you don't. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom of that, Dr. Stedman, and let's look at our norms and make sure that we all still feel good about the norms, about being respectful to each other and to us. Always remain muted unless we ask you to unmute. Show your video so we can put some names and faces together. And make sure you're always dressed presentably as and appropriately for class. We ask that you try to tell your family members that you're on class during this time. I have 2 granddaughters that live with me, and I promise you, I'll be the first one to break this, or they will be. But I know that happens sometimes. Um, we ask that you hold, and this is the one thing that we've done this enough, we kind of know how this goes. We ask that you hold all your questions until the end of class and refrain from using that chat box, okay? Because when you're doing that, writing in that chat box, you're not being able to listen, or at least I can't do that. Maybe you're multi-talented and multifaceted and can do that, but most of the time we can't type and listen to something totally different at the same time. So that's why we ask you to do this. Chances are, as the class progresses, we will answer your questions at the end of class. And this is sometimes what takes us over our timeline. If you feel good about all the information and you're good to go, you can log off at any time when we get to that point, the Q&A time. Okay? Are we good with that? Can you give me a thumbs up if we are good with that? Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stedman.
Well, Dr. Revis, let's look very quickly, and this is in your course shell under Module 2. The agenda will always be there, and we're going to try to adhere to this as much as possible. I put minutes beside it, but chances are we won't completely adhere to that. We'll try as much as we can, but again, we're going to go back over AAPSL Task 1, and I'm going to do it just as if you're hearing it for the first time. So if you fully understood it the first time, please bear with me. I think it's important that we go over this as if you've not heard it before, because the review of this is going to be due this coming Sunday. It's an assignment. And remember, your attendance will be based on whether you submit your completed assignment on time this coming Sunday. If it's not there by 6:00 p.m. and it's not the quality that it needs to be, I'm not saying that, I mean, it's a review, so it's not going to be perfect, but don't send us half mess. thinking that I'm just going to submit something and I'll get you will get a 0 on it and you will not get credit. So make sure that when you do your work, you do quality work to the best of your ability the first time. That's why you've got to map it out. But we're going to do task 1 of the AAPSL, then I'm going to break away. Dr. Revis is going to take over and she's going to tell you how to maneuver the Dover Library, and she's going to start with APA Part 1 because that is going to be so vitally important to understand that as you're completing Task 1. Then I'm going to introduce you to AAPSL Task 2. You're going to say, Dr. Stedman, that's overload. Well, we have no choice because as soon as you get through with, we approve Task 1, you have got to hit the road running with Task 2. So we're going to introduce it so that those that clear, you're not going to be held back. And I hope that's nobody. So you can move forward with that because not this Sunday, but next Sunday, Task 2 will be due for review. So there's no break in time. Your peer review process starts effective this coming week. So you're going to have to understand that. Dr. Revis is going to go over that. And then um, I'm going to introduce you to the internship part 1. And just because you see my name or Dr. Revis's name highlighted, that means that they're in charge of that section. But it doesn't mean that when I'm doing the AAPSL that Dr. Revis cannot and will not, interject some things or some thoughts and vice versa. We help each other out with that. That just means that that's who's responsible. And I want you to always look at underneath that. And this will be a standard throughout the semester. We tell you what week 2 responsibilities are. This tells you exactly what has to be turned in by 6 o'clock this coming Sunday for an assignment. This is your attendance right here. This is your attendance, what you see right here. And we always give you a chance to look at what next week looks like. You always need to understand what you're finishing and what you're headed for. And we will always keep you posted in that. And notice the peer reviews start after this week. They start. So you have to have an understanding of that. And it has the deadline date for that. Now, also remember that you can go, let me minimize that and let me stop the share. Always, well, no, I didn't want to stop the share. Always remember you can go to your calendar and remember your calendar. If you go to your calendar, it shows you exactly what assignments are due on that date, when they're due. And if you click on that, it will allow you to put your assignment in there for a grade. So, that calendar is the best thing since sliced bread to me. I didn't realize, Dr. Revis, that it was so good until, we looked at it last week and I said, wow, I wish I had had that when I was in school. But I remember in Blackboard, and I'm not going to go back there because we don't have time to go over all of that again. Remember in Blackboard, you have the section that says AAPSL materials and resources. And under that, you're going to have the AAPSL helpful hints. And we said, I copied mine off today, Dr. Revis. I've got it right here beside me, the AAPSL helpful hints. You need to make you a copy of that. And this needs to be beside your computer every time that you are working on the AAPSL. And then when you get to the APTEL, we'll have the same information for you to copy off as well. You need to make sure that you always have access to that as a guide and a help when you're doing your work. And remember the AAPSL, we're going to go over this again tonight, the AAPSL completed example. We've given you a complete AAPSL that you can model your work after, not copy, but model. And it shows you the format that you're to use, and then the AAPSL template that you must use. And then I'm going to go over tonight before I stop my part and tell you what you have to do to be accomplished with the work that you're doing. But I want to go to the AAPSL helpful hints. The AAPSL is the first of 6 evidences that you're going to complete in this program. AAPSL is an acronym for Analysis and Action Plan for Student Learning. In any school's all about students, about children, and so we begin with the student in mind. That's why we start with the AAPSL. Prior to beginning this work, and this is, I would hope that unless you just were not with us and you haven't seen the video, I would hope that you've already had that conversation with your principal. Prior to beginning the app, so you should have a conversation with your principal explaining what you're going to be doing. Um, um, and then ask them to grant you permission to be able to work with a team of your peers to lead a PLC. The PLC, you don't know what that PLC is going to be yet because you haven't gotten to the point of identifying based on what you're going to do in the AAPSL Task 2, what that need is. So you can't just say, well, this is the team and this is what we're going to do. You're not at that place yet. Once you get permission from that principal, remember you need the artifacts. You need proof of that. So even though you've spoken with him or her, you will send them an email. You would just say, based on our conversation, I'm asking permission to lead a PLC as a part of my work with Gardner Webb University with a team of my peers. Do I have your permission? And you should get an affirmative response back that says, yes, I'm glad, blah, 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 what it is. You will copy that, and that will become an artifact in the work that you submit to us. And I'll get to that part later on and show you where that will be. But that becomes a living, breathing document that you will use more than one time with the work that you'll be doing. You're to use the template as a guide, and remember, you don't deviate from the template. Now, I'm going to ask somebody just to answer. Remember last week, we said that when you're looking at the template, if it's in black, what do you do with anything that's written in black on that template? Anybody?
Leave it there.
You leave it there. Thank you, Bobby. You leave it there. You do not change it. You leave everything in black there. If it's in yellow, highlighted in yellow, what do? Anybody?
Add text.
You add text. You got to write something, right? Now, once you write something, what do you do with the highlighted yellow?
Take it off.
You take it off. Take it off, right. Now, if you see red, what does red tell you?
That is what you put in.
That's what you put in. And the red is actually hints of things that you can use, Marissa, to be able to enhance the work that you're doing. It's suggestions. Now, once you do all your narrative work, you see all that stuff in yellow and you put your narrative work in there. You take the hints from the red that's in there. What do you do with that red also?
You take off the red.
Take off the red. So all you're going to see is what color?
Black.
You're going to see black. Thank you. That's good. Now, last week we said that you should have already been working on your school profile. I want Dr. Revis, I'm going to ask them to do something, and you check the chat box. Everybody that has met with your principal and gotten permission to move on with your PLC, give us a thumbs up in the chat box. Can you put it in the chat box? Dr. Revis, if you would check the chat box and just see what we've got there, how it looks. Okay, they're coming in. Still coming in. Dr. Revis, when you get a final count of that, 22 have responded, 23, we're just about there. Okay, now, if you have started or completed your school profile, write the word yes in there, or give us the letter Y. Just put Y, the Y in there. If you started your school profile. So thumbs up is that you've met with your principal, you've gotten permission to do your PLC. Y means that you have started your school profile or either completed it. If you have formed your PLC, or you know who's going to be on your PLC, you've asked for the members to be on your PLC, put the letter T in there for team. I'm going to go back and look at this as well after when Dr. Revis starts her part. Okay, while you're doing that, remember we said the school profile, it tells about your school. And we gave an example. You will create a school profile prior to task 1 that will be used consistently throughout completion of the 6 evidences. The heading is school profile. This is going to be your heading right here. And you see where you put it. You align it to the left. The school profile is the section where you tell the story about your school and surrounding community. And we've given you an example of just something that so that you can get an idea of, what a school profile looks like. It's going to be different for all of you, but there's going to be some similarities. If there's some uniqueness about your school, then by all means, we want you to tell it there. Okay. Then task 1. Task 1, this is your heading is PLC research, and you notice it is aligned to the left and it's in boldface print. This is a part of the APA that Dr. Revis is going to talk about. Notice everything is double spaced. You always double space. And Dr. Revis will say this too, but while I have an opportunity, I'm going to show you these things. Remember, your PLC research you have a minimum of 3 sources. And remember, one of those 3 sources must be a reference from what person? Anybody?
Four.
Richard DeFore. Remember, this is he is the seminal research. He is basically considered the father of professional learning communities. So, we want to give all due respect to him and all the research he and his wife have done. So when you're doing your research, a minimum of 3 different sources. Does that mean that you can't have more than 3? No, you can have more than 3, but you must have a minimum of 3 different sources, and one of the 3 must be DeFore. Now, what am I doing there? Okay, you're basically going to say, what is a PLC? What does a PLC look like? How is a PLC to be conducted, etc.? You may talk about the norms in there. All of this is not going to be according, and I'm looking at Danielle right now. This is not according to what Danielle thinks, or Marissa thinks, or Kim thinks. This is according to what the research says. And you will cite your research. And there's an example of what that should look like. Here, so you use that example. Then your heading is PLC selection. Now notice, look at the heading again. PLC selection, to the left aligned, bold-faced print. You are to select the members who will serve on your PLC. You are to explain your process for choosing your team, identify who they are. You may not want to give them names. You may want to call them, team member A, team member B, team member C. I don't care. But you can put their names in there. It doesn't matter to me. You're to explain, who they are, identify them, provide their credentials for serving, and tell about their specific talents, expertise that they bring to the table. If they're if they've got how many years have they been teaching? Because it does make a difference if they're a veteran teacher or if they're a novice teacher. It's okay to have novice teachers on there, but you wouldn't want to pack your PLC with just all novice teachers or necessarily all veteran teachers. But anyway, tell the story about who they are, why you picked them, and what specific things do they bring to the table. You need to make sure that, including yourself, that you have approximately 5 people on your team. You can ask the ELA supervisor or curriculum coach. Those kind of people can serve on your team. If your principal will serve on your team, that is a plus for you, because that means that you don't have to do a separate presentation if your principal's on your team. Otherwise, you will have to do a separate presentation at times. This alleviates extra work for you if you can get them to serve on your team. Your AP can be on your team. The question came up today, my principal doesn't have time, and they may not have time to meet with you all the time, but they can meet with you as much as possible. And when we talk about your internship, they may not have the time to direct you all the time. They will be the ones that still oversee your work. They will sign off on your work, give the okay on your work, but they can also say, we will give permission to the assistant principal or the curriculum coaches at the school to also give you these opportunities and to work with you as well. So include those people on your team as much as possible. And this is an example of what the narrative work should look like. And then thirdly, and finally, your PLC heading is PLC meeting. Now, at this point, the only thing you're doing is, like it says here, PLC meeting. During the first meeting, I thank the members for their willingness to be a part of the team. You're going to talk to them about, that you're a student at Gardner-Webb University. You've been tasked with the responsibility of leading a PLC, and you'll be disaggregating the data with their assistants to identify at your school based on what the data reveals, what is the most pressing need. And hopefully the principal is going to give you the okay when you get to that point to say, yes, you can move forward with this most pressing need, or it will be whatever the principal designates for it to be. So those are the 3 main things that you're going to be doing with task 1, prompt 1. Now, this is going to be for every one of the tasks that you do. Your next section is going to be, the heading is going to be references. Now notice, your other headings have been aligned to the left. Notice where references is aligned. It's centered based on APA. The references this is from your research. At this point, this is going to be all the research that you did in the lit review up there. What is the PLC research? And notice it is double spaced, and this is APA style. References APA style, and notice that is this is not aligned right here, but they should be aligned, properly aligned, and double spaced throughout. And Dr. Revis will talk about the hanging indent for those as well. And then the next section is going to be, your heading is appendices. Now I want you to notice, your heading is going to be appendices, and then notice you have Appendix A. Notice it's centered and it's in bold-faced letters, and notice it's double-spaced. And this is just a very brief narrative in boldface of what this appendix is about, and then the actual appendix. You see, good morning. This email serves as a follow-up to our discussion last week and to ask permission to form a PLC, blah, blah, blah. I approve that Ms. Morton may have access to JMA school data for her internship ed leadership program. These are all good communication artifacts. And then you're going to include, at a minimum, you're always going to include what the agenda for your meeting that you have. There should always be an agenda. And then in addition to that, you should, as much as possible, have someone to take a picture and put a picture in there of you presenting and show the team members actually working. These are good artifacts that you can use now and you'll be able to use later on. So that is, some tasks have more than one prompt. This task only has one prompt. When I get to task 2 in just a little bit, it will have 2 prompts, but I'm going to stop there, stop my share, and I'm going to ask, before I turn it over to Dr. Revis, does everybody know how to get started and what to do for your assignment this week that's due on Sunday by 6 o'clock? Do you know what you have to do? Okay, any questions about that before we move on? Is that clear as mud? Now, Dr. Revis is going to be the, go ahead.
I'm sorry, question.
Go ahead.
I'm an instructional coach, and so I'm holding PLCs every week. Do I still need to get that artifact saying that I have permission
Yes.
to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Treat this, Vanessa, because there's others in your here. Treat this as if, for these purposes, treat this no differently than if you were a classroom teacher. Okay.
Gotcha.
Get that same permission there. Good question, though, Vanessa. Thank you. Now, Dr. Revis is going to take it from here. She's going to help you find research, how to do research, and she's going to hit the nuts and bolts of the APA that you are going to be required to know and understand to be effective in this program. Dr. Revis.
Okay, before I start talking about the Dover Library, just one quick reminder. When you have your first PLC meeting, I like to call that your organizational meeting. Don't forget to do an activity to create your norms for the PLC and try to decide on when you're going to meet the next time. Now, again, reiterating from last week, you will need to meet with this PLC weekly for the first 4 weeks, I think.
And Dr. Revis, I forgot to say this too. Thank you for remembering that. Remember that meeting, you are not identifying a problem in your school. That meeting is not for you to identify the problem. You may say that, in a future meeting, we're going to look at data to identify a problem. Don't even have a discussion about somebody. Don't even let anybody stop them if they start saying, well, we already know what the problem is. You may think you know, and it may be what you think you know, but so many have been fooled when they got to task 2 and actually did the data dive. They found out it was not always what they thought it was. Right, Dr. Revis?
That is correct. And I know in North Carolina, our school report card data is going to be released or approved by the state board on Wednesday, tomorrow. And so what is nice about for you North Carolina people is you will be able to examine new data when you get there, but you're not examining anything right now. Okay. All right, let's move on and let me show you how to use our Dover Library. I'm going to our course content page under University Resources. There is a link to Dover Library under University Resources. And it comes up, and right here is your Bulldog One search. This is where you go in. I don't worry about these two things, the catalog or journals, and I'll show you why. So you're going to be doing professional learning communities. That's your first research you've got to do. So type it in. I already had it typed in. And let it whirl. And look at how many results you get. Almost 2 million results. Well, guys, there is no way you can siphon through all that. So you go over here to the left-hand side to refine your search. You always, always, always want to pick things that are on full text online. And very simply because you don't have time to request materials through the interlibrary loan. Always check full text online. And then the next one, the content type, I would recommend you do journal articles. They're short articles. You don't have time to read a book, I don't think. And then look, let's see how many we get. We still have over 300,000 hits, results. So I'm going to go down one more place. And I'm going, this is publication date, because I have so many. I'm going to do 3 years here. And I'm only going to do education in the next, where it says discipline filter, education. Now go back and let's see. We still have over 16,000 results. That's a lot. Here's a way you can look through them quickly. Hit the quick look, and this pops up here. It gives you an overview of the article so you can see whether you want to use it or not. Remember, we are defining what a PLC is according to the DeFore model. We're telling what it is, how it works, and how it operates. And of course, how it improves student learning. So that's how I do that. And I just keep going through, quick look, scan through it and see if that's something you want. And again, you have over 17,000 results. Now, I know that one reference has to be from DeFore himself. You heard Dr. Stedman say DeFore is the seminal researcher. That means he's the godfather. He was the person that came up with this. So if I want to find his work, I'm going to have to go back down here to publication date, and I'm going to have to change this. I'm going to have to go 10 years back, maybe even more. Let's see if I can find something with him right quick. I may have to go back farther. I'm going to have to go back farther to get him. If that won't work, then go to, let's go 2014 and see what pops up. No search results. I don't know why that happened. But anyway, you can see what I need to do in order to get DeFore to pop up. Oh, wait a minute. I know why it happened. Because I put in the wrong search date. Sorry. Now, let's see what happens there. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can find him here. And don't sweat it if you can't find him, because I'll show you, we have an article in our AAPSL resources that's from him. But one of them has to be to 4, and then you can select from a lot of other. One of the things you'll see is the reason these are coming up and he's not the author is they're using his work in their writing. So I'm not having any luck here, so I'm going to quit, and I'm going to use the journal article that we have in our course shell. So again, type in what you want to look at, and we always only want to do full text online. I say with journal articles, if you want to go with ebooks, fine. I don't have time to read books, and you won't either. Publication date, we want to go most recent. The more hits you have, the more you narrow your search filters. Okay. Now I want to go back and just look at this homepage where we hit the library homepage. This is called the homepage. Over here, here's your Bulldog One search. Over here are some APA links and citation guides. Now, I'm not going to talk about this in a minute. Well, I am. I'm going to go ahead and hit on something and let you look. When it comes up, there are all kinds of style guides. You always make sure you're an APA style. And we use the 7th edition. And right here, it tells me how to cite journal articles, or if you get a whole book, but you're going to stay mostly with journal articles. And when you look at this, it's going to tell you how to cite it as for a reference, and it'll also tell you how to cite it for an in-text citation. Here is the video that I'm going to reference in a few minutes that talks about how to make those hanging indents for your reference section. And you can go back and look at that. Now, I do have, back in our content page, I want to go now to the AAPSL resources. I believe it's under this right here. Here's where you're going to live a lot. AAPSL resources. That's where you find the template that you write in, the helpful hints, the completed example, etc. Here is a video that I made that goes back over the Dover Library Research. You know, every library is a little different, but there are a lot of similarities. So I don't want you to hang out here and you don't have to view it unless you get stuck. But what I want to talk about now is switch gears and let's talk about APA 7th edition. Guys, you got to learn APA. You got to. The most important things that you need to learn, number 1, how to do an in-text citation and how to do a correct reference. You've got to learn how to do it, period. And I'm going to give you some other things that you need to know about APA. I'm trying to move my screen around here to get it out of the way. Excuse me. All right. Acronyms should be used at least 3 times within a paper. If you're not using the acronym at least 3 times, don't abbreviate. Instead, just spell it out. Now, one of the things you'll probably use an acronym for is for your school. If you name your school, then you probably want to create an acronym in that school profile because you're going to use that over and over and over. Only if you use it 3 times do you create that acronym. Tiny thing, but you'll use that. I'm not going to worry
Dr.
about
Ravis,
levels.
What about professional learning community?
You're going to use that all the way through. So yeah, put PLCs in there and create your acronym for it. I'm not going to worry about levels of heading, and I'll tell you why. If you're writing in the template, you're going to have your levels of heading. Okay? So don't worry about this one. There are some really crazy nuances with capitalization with APA 7th edition. And here's where you can find more information about capitalization. You will only capitalize proper nouns. That would be like my name, but when I'm describing Kathy as a member of my PLC, it's lowercase math teacher. Lowercase if I'm the department chair. Sorry. Lowercase if I'm the principal. And lowercase if I'm the superintendent. The only thing that's capitalized is my name. And that's a little crazy. That doesn't seem natural to us. So here is an example. Now it should be double spaced, but we can't double space it here. But here are some things I want you to know. This is a narrative citation. It comes within the narrative. And note in APA, I don't ever give the author's first name. Only the last name. It's author last name, parentheses, the date of publication. That's how you cite it in a narrative in-text citation. All right, here's an acronym. And guess what? Right before it, I spell it out and establish that acronym because I'm going to use it lots through here. Then I talk about some people serving on my team. One of us, Dale Lamb, math teacher, lowercase. One teacher from English. English is a proper noun. Mathematics, science, history, all those, lowercase, and so on. It really does not. We want to capitalize all these things, but they're not. Mental health is not capitalized. Personal safety is not capitalized. Now, notice I have here a number. And we're going to talk about those numbers in a minute. And when you spell them out and when you write out the number as a numeral. Just as an aside, you will not use this a lot, but in APA 7th edition, you can use they as a singular pronoun. This is another thing that seems a little quirky to me. You always refer to yourself in first person. So you would say, instead of saying the candidate led or convened the first PLC on September the 10th, you don't say the candidate, you refer to yourself. I led the first PLC meeting on September, and you don't have to put down dates necessarily. I'm just giving you that as an example. Now, this doesn't mean you're doing a personal narrative. It has to be a professionally written paper. But you never refer to yourself as the candidate or the intern. You always say I. Or if that seems really, really strange to you, you can rearrange your sentence so that you're not having to refer to yourself. Try to always use your active voice, meaning the subject is doing is doing the work. Now here's where I want to talk about figures. And I know we have a few of you who already have doctorates, and you're gonna just really cringe over this. In this program, all of our figures and tables we call figures. And that's just because we don't go that deeply into tables and figures. But you have to learn how to format a figure. So figures are referred to as figure 1, figure 2 in Arabic numerals, and they go in succession throughout your paper. But your figures are always numbered, and you have to have a figure title. And here's an example. Figure 1, the title is in italics, title case italics. And you should label your legends or axes, and then you can put a note to describe the content if there are particulars to that content. In other words, I don't know what this means. These should be labeled instead of just category 1, 2, 3, 4. If they're not, you need to use the note to talk about the data, what the data sets are representing. Here's some commonly referred to singular and plural spellings. This one right here is the one you got to watch out for. Okay. Data, when you use the word data, that's plural. If you're going to talk about it in the singular, it's datum. And so on for these commonly used words that you may use in your writing. In-text citations, boy, you got to know how to do them. You got to know how to do them. Let's talk about first a direct quote. If it's a direct quote, you're lifting it word for word from a journal or wherever. You have to use quotation marks and you must cite the page number. A direct quote has to have quotation marks at the beginning and the ending and in your citation, which this is called a parenthetical at the end. You've got to have a page number. We encourage you to paraphrase and summarize. But even though you're paraphrasing and summarizing another author's idea, you still have to cite it. And an example here, you cite it the same way. The only difference is you don't have quotations and you don't have to put page numbers when you paraphrase and summarize. And if your quoted text is 40 words or more, you should use a block quote. I shouldn't see any of that. I want to see very limited quoted. You've got to learn how to summarize and paraphrase. Now, if you have 1 to 2 authors, you put their name, comma, date. Last name only, comma, date. Last names only with an ampersand and date. And I know that this is a citation for a direct quote because I have the page number. 3 or more authors' names, you put the first author that's listed, and then you use this abbreviation, et al, with a period, et al. This is Latin for and others. Author's last name, no comma, et al, period, then your comma, and then your date. Author's last name and date. And here's another example. Again, it has a page number, so I know that's an in-text citation for a direct quote. So this would be incorrect because I have 4 authors. I have to do this, the et al. Now, just very quickly, I want to go over this. You see here, we have a sentence that's been paraphrased. Author's thought, but it's paraphrased. And that's how I put the narrative citation or parenthetical citation. Notice I don't have a period here at the end. My period goes after the citation. And then at the bottom, we have a series of multiple authors. Now, this is one author here. And I would use a semicolon and state my other author, semicolon, and my other author. If you have that, you're probably not going to have this. But if you do, you separate it with a semicolon. You would only have this if you are collecting thoughts across your 2 or 3 articles.
Dr. Evans, may I say one thing now? Going
Sure.
back, when you do your in-text citations, there are programs out there that says we'll do this for you. Do not use those programs. It will do it incorrectly for you, inevitably. You've got to know how to do it, and you've got to manually do it yourself. Do not use those programs. I promise you, it's not going to do them correctly for you.
And those programs are particularly dangerous when you're doing your reference section. So your references for in-text citations will come in your reference section at the end, and then your appendices are at the very end. So for every in-text citation, you have to have a corresponding reference. And friends, you got to learn how to do a reference. It's double spaced, and to create your hanging indent, there's that video that I showed you back there on the library homepage. Excuse me. I know this is hard to see, but this tells me how I would write an entry for a reference, and that shows me the format. It would be in a citation, parenthetical citation, and this is what it would be in a narrative citation. And I'll show you where you can look for those in just a sec. Here are references. Notice it's all double spaced. Now, I want to draw your attention to this because inevitably, you're not going to do this. This is the title of a journal article. And the only word that's capitalized in the title of the article is the first word of the title. And if you have a colon or a semicolon, the first word after that. Again, I know this is a journal article. No, excuse me. I know this is a book. Okay. This is a journal article right here. Titles of books and titles of your articles are in parentheses. Okay. Or in italics. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Italics. For numbers, 1-digit numbers is the way I remember it, are written out. 1-digit numbers are written out. Once you get 10 or more, you can write it out in numerals. You never want to begin or end a sentence with numerals. So if you say 5% of the population, of the teaching population, have doctorate degrees, or have doctorate degrees, you would write out the word 5, and you also would write the word percent. And I'll show you that in just a minute. One space following a punctuation at the end of the sentence. That's a little strange. We always use Times New Roman 12 point. Always. And here's an example of what I was talking about. 20%, you can write the numeral out, because usually we would just put the number 20. But if it comes at the beginning of a sentence, you write it out. If you write the number out, you write out the percent.
And Dr. Revis, the best practice is that you try not to do even that too much. You try to put it somewhere embedded in the sentence, rewrite your sentence in a different way so that it doesn't always begin with that.
Now I'm taking you back to the Dover Library very quickly, and I know we're running late. Citation style guide. First of all, citations and when to cite. If you just want a little refresher there, be sure you're on APA. Go here to journal articles. That's going to be the most frequently used things. Journal article. It tells me how to do. It's a pattern, friends. They're all patterns. Okay. It tells me how to do it. And in the reference section, you write out the names of the authors, all of them. And again, I know this is an article title because it's in plain text. Notice only capitalize the first word in the title of your article, or the first word that comes after a colon or semicolon. This is the title. Titles of books or titles of journals are in parentheses, italics, and that would be your volume and number. And then you put your page numbers and a DOI if they have it. This is how you would cite. This particular reference should be your parenthetical citation at the end of a sentence or a narrative citation in the middle of the sentence or at the beginning. Usually you see them at the beginning of the sentence. This is the format that you would use for a journal article. It's a pattern. And you can go back. It says, well, what if it has an article number? Or what if you have one with missing information? Or so on and so forth. It gives you examples for all these. If you stay with your journals and when you're pulling your research, then you're going to be fine here with staying with this. Now, when we get on into the program, you're going to probably go to websites, and we've got that covered too. I'm not going to go to it right now, but you can find it right here. I'm not going to fool with that right now because you're probably not going to use it on this first work you're doing. But again, it tells you how to do it. It's a pattern. Learn your patterns.
And Dr. Revis, you said this, you have got, if you're not familiar with it, you've got to learn it. You've got to camp out there and when you practice it, the more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. So,
and Dr. Stedman and I are not going to correct it for you. We're going to tell you APA format error. We're not going to tell you what it is. You can look it up, because let me tell you why we're like that. You're not going to learn it if I just tell you what to do, but you will learn it and you will remember it if you have to go dig for it and look it up.
And it's important, again, that you spend the time, camp out up front. Again, this is what we said, that this first 3 or 4 weeks is it's intense. But after you get through that, then it relaxes a little bit because you become much more comfortable with it. So that learning curve does take place once you have practiced it for a while. Dr. Revis, I'm going to move on with and again, I realize that we are, that we're having to run over a little bit, but I think you'd rather do this tonight than have to come back and spend another whole night, Thursday night, going over some things. So let's look at this. All I'm going to do is introduce you to task 2. Everybody gave me the thumbs up that you know what to do this week with task 1. The reason I have to give you task 2 is because as soon as you get the clearance on task 1, you need to have an understanding of what your next step is. Okay, with task 2, again, your heading is going to be data collection strategies. This is not due this week, but you have to think about it this week. You're going to work with the selected PLC from task 1 to determine the strategies that will be used to collect the data to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. Now, that means if you're going to work with your team, that means you got to have a meeting, right? So this is going to be your second meeting with them. You're going to hit the road running with them, and you're going to sit down and it's dialogue. And I'm looking at Vanessa now. Vanessa's going to meet with her team, and she's going to be prepared, and she's going to set the stage when she gets in there, and she's already going to have some ideas when she meets with that team. But then she's going to solicit responses from them, and you're putting it all on the table. You're not there yet. How are we going to move forward to determine how we're going to identify the most pressing need in student achievement at this school. And again, those of you that work as coaches in the school, you gotta step, you do that already. And then if you've worked in PLCs in your school, this should not be new stuff to you. So, when you meet, this is what you're going to do. And your narrative work is exactly, it goes back to that first person. I led the team in, my PLC team in, and then you talk about it. Your narrative work, you simply talk about the process and what the strategies that your team came up with. You may put a lot of stuff out there. We talked about this and did this, but in conclusion, this is what we decided that we were going to do. Then your next heading is criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Once the team and you have determined those strategies from number one for collecting data, you will decide what criteria and process will be used for identifying the most pressing need. The narrative work for this section will discuss the criteria and that process. And notice how it begins. Again, this is just an example. You will have your own. When our PLC initially met for the first time, we discussed analyzing the current data that was available in order to observe trends that stood out to us. This aligned with and helped create our vision. And then it goes on and it talks about that. Again, be specific with the criteria and the process for identifying the most pressing need, and you're pulling from that information that you talked about previous to this. Then number 3, your heading is collaborative data analysis. Now you've talked about it, your strategies. Number 2, you're putting it all together. Now this is your collaborative data analysis. You're going to put it all the puzzle pieces out there on the table, and you're going to look at it. And Dr. Revis is going to talk about this. Danielle is going to talk about that. Vanessa's going to talk about this. Dr. Stebbins going to talk about this. You're collaborating. You're looking at it, because what I look at, I may not see what Vanessa looks at, or what Danielle looks at, or any of you look at. So it's a collaboration. This is what you're going to talk about. You're collaborating on what you see, what your data dive. You're talking about all of that there. And then finally, after you have done all of this, you have looked at everything, you've flipped it over, you've moved it, you've turned it aside, you've torn it apart, and you finally, okay, and everybody, and Vanessa's leading this team, and Vanessa looks at them and she says, in conclusion, what do y'all see here? And there should be consensus, with what you see. But this is when, as a team, you're going to say, based on everything that we have done, this is our most pressing need. And you're going to talk about that. You're going to say that in your narrative work, most pressing need. Our PLC determined, and then you're gonna spit it out right here, exactly what it is. And then the most pressing need is in there, and then you're going to justify why the team came up with that decision. And remember, it's not an I thing, it's a we thing. You are saying, I led the team, and this is what we determined was the most pressing need. And then we'll talk about this more in detail. You wrote everything in task 1. This has 2 prompts. Everything in task 1 is, in prompt 1 is narrative. Task 2, prompt 1 is narrative. When you get to task 2, prompt 2, guess what? You're going to tell the story in 2 different ways. In prompt 2, everything that you talked about up there, you're going to provide graphic representation here for the work. You're going to show, you're going to show something in charts, tables, graphs. It could be where you've pulled something from the most recent test data. You don't have to create something. You can extract it from that if that's, if that's the information that you're using. But you're going to graphically talk about and make sure that you provide enough graphic representation that it fully tells the story. Is one enough? No. When the evaluators look at it, will they look for more enough graphics there to tell the story? Absolutely. And Dr. Revis and I are going to look at for that as well. Please remember that all of these things that you pull, you're going to identify them as figures according to APA. So in prompt 1, you're writing it. Prompt 2, you are visually representing what you did in prompt 1. So there should not be figures in prompt 1. They all come in prompt 2. And it will require some basic narrative work because that comes in identifying your figures or a little lead-in narrative to get into whatever you're doing. And then after that, remember, you've got to have a reference section, and then you've got to have an appendices at the end. Now, if I put something up here, graphically representing it, do I have to turn around and put it in the appendices again? No. The appendices is going to be additional information that you would refer to that's not up there. Your appendices, remember, you're going to put your agenda down there again where you've met and other information, but you don't put the information here and turn around and put it down there again. We don't need to see it twice. Right, Dr. Revis?
Correct.
That's right. Okay, so that is giving you just a quick look at that, but do you see the direction that we're already headed in? Do you see with the AAPSL the direction, how we're building what we're doing? So that is what you will do once we have approved your work for task 1. Now, we will tell you, task 1 is going to be the easiest thing you do. It's going to be the easiest thing you do. So go ahead and knock it out and get it over with so you can go ahead and move forward with this, because you've got to go ahead this week and schedule a meeting next week for you and your team to be able to do this. What if we can't always meet face-to-face? Zoom with them. Find out if maybe they'll Zoom with you in an evening time if they don't have time during the day. You can Zoom on a Saturday if they're willing to Zoom with you. That's why your team needs to be people that you get along well with and they support what you're doing. Don't find people that it's like pulling hen's teeth to get them to do anything. You don't want them on your team. Okay? Find good people that's going to help you.
And if I could just kind of summarize a couple pitfalls.
Go
You're
ahead.
having your organizational meeting this week. Do not let them get off on telling you what their most pressing need is. And by all means, don't let them go down the attendance and student behavior road, because this is not about attendance and student behavior. But if they want to start identifying the most pressing need, simply put them off and say, that's what we're doing in our next meeting. We're going to look at our most recent student performance and growth data. And again, if you're in North Carolina, that's going to be approved tomorrow, and you should have your results just in time to really hit the road running. I'm not sure when South Carolina's new data is going to be will be reported. Can anybody tell me, or does anybody know?
It's like the middle of this month sometime, I think.
Okay.
But
Well, that's going to be too late. You use last year's, okay? All right. All right. Take a deep breath. We've got a few more things to do. I'm going to change gears now. And we are going to talk about peer reviews. And the first thing you may say to yourself, with all this work, why am I having to do a peer review? Well, I'm going to tell you, okay? Here's the reason. Unless you're a current administrator, chances are you feel very comfortable giving feedback to students, but chances are you have not been required to give quality feedback to adults. So it gives you practice giving adults quality feedback. It also provides feedback to your peers to help them improve their work. And it gives you an opportunity to see the work of others so you can get some ideas on how you might want to improve your work. So, what kind of descriptive feedback do we want to give? Well, Whitaker says that there are 5 things that help praise work. It needs to be authentic. Be truthful. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't say things like, perhaps you might want to do this. Just say, according to the rubric, you need to do da 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 da. Just be specific. Give examples. It needs to be timely and immediate. The first thing you do after you turn in task 1 is you start looking at your peer review teammates and you start pulling one of theirs and start giving feedback. It needs to be clean, not attached to something else. Don't bring in personal things or whatever. It needs to be clean and it needs to be private. So you're required by 5 p.m. next Tuesday, you're required to review 2 peers' work of task 1. Okay? Now, let me go to those materials and we're going to look at some examples. Now I'm going into the peer review resources. It's right under, I shouldn't even have that visible, but it's right under the AAPSL materials. Don't get here in the AAPSL. In fact, I'm going to hide that right now. Peer review resources. And this is where you use your peer review teams. Again, I'm going to have to go back and take a few names off. These are my class. Don't wig out if you're in Dr. Stedman's class because your name's not going to be here. But you decide this week. Team 1, you get together and decide who is going to review who. So Kim may review Erica and Priscilla this week. Erica may do Kim and Priscilla. Everybody has to do 2 and should receive 2 peer reviews. So that's the first thing. Decide who's going to review whom in the peer review. Now I'm going to start out with a non-example. You have a template right here. That's not the template. That's an example. I'm sorry. A blank template is right here. You will always use this template. You put your name here and you put the last name of the person that you're reviewing. And you give them feedback in these different areas: content, rubric strength, rubric weaknesses, how do they demonstrate leadership, mechanics and grammar, organization, and APA formatting. And please, I don't want to see things like, I think APA is correct. You need to know and give them specific information if something is not correct. Now, I want to give you what I call a non-example. And you can see it right here. The task is aligned with the course content. Thank you for a great paper. The only downfall I saw was on the first page where your task directions were still highlighted in red. Congrats on being an AP. There is nothing here of any substance.
And Dr.
If you
Ravis,
do,
I'm going to be up front. If you send me this, you're going to get a 0.
and you get only one chance here on these peer reviews. These are easy hundreds. But I promise you, it's going to take you a little while to get comfortable with this. Well, I went out of it. I do that all the time. I'm sorry. Now I want to give you an example and look at the difference. This follows what we talked about earlier as far as being specific. And this is in your course shell. You can look at it. I need to see this kind of depth. Okay? I'm just telling you. It tells exactly in this narrative how not only points out the weaknesses, but offers suggestions. When he talks about the school setting, you do a good job describing student staff, you give a very nice breakdown. You have a nice statistical breakdown of your school standardized test scores. Excellent job of adhering to the rubric. Again, some weaknesses, areas for growth. I cannot find any discussion as to why you selected your team members. They got to have that in there. It's positive if you read through this, and I'm not going to read this to you because you can do this on your own. It's positive, but it's very point blank. Don't pussyfoot around it. People want to hear what it is, and they want you to be direct and give them specific feedback on how to make it better, and so on and so forth. Recheck your APA on your in-text citations, as I see a few errors, and it tells about the first and third citation, and then tells them to check their citation of the formatting on figure 2. It's specific. It even directs them to where they need to go. The first time you do this, guys, it's going to take you some time. Don't wait until Monday afternoon to start working on these. These are due at 5 p.m. on Monday, next Monday, 2 of them. Now, Dr. Stemman, you're going to have to help me here. Where do they put this in the Dropbox?
Okay.
It's under discussions.
Yeah, under discussions. Go to discussions and scroll down. Okay, here it is. AAPSL Task 1 for peer review. Now that means that you're going to submit your Task 1.
Somebody's already submitted one.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to submit your Task 1 there for your peers. That's where you will go and you will look at the work, and then you will, it's ongoing. This is where you will provide, you will submit back to them your peer review for them. This is where it goes. There's no grades for this. It's for you and for your peers. Now, what if I'm looking at Kathy Revis's work and I give her feedback? Does she necessarily have to agree with everything that I say as a peer? No. But there are suggestions there, and she needs to at least look at it. But when she goes back, she may realize, I do have this correct. Remember, it's a learning curve for all of us. So when she goes back and check that, she may say, well, I did have that right, and she doesn't necessarily have, but it should be constructive and effective feedback that they could use in order to make their paper move to be accomplished in the end. Now, where is the difference going to be? Now, you put them in there. This is where you put them in. This is where the responses go back and forth. So if, and again, I'm looking at if Danielle, Marissa, and Vanessa are on the same team, and Danielle puts her work in there, and Vanessa is assigned to look at Danielle's, this is where you're going to find it. You're going to put it, and then you're going to go back in there, and you're going to put your review back in there for her to see. Everybody can see them. It doesn't matter. Okay, this is for discussion. And it tells you, you hit reply to put it there. Now, in addition to that, Dr. Revis, come out of that, you've got to take those same 2 reviews and you've got to submit them to us. Whoever, Vanessa reviews Danielle and she reviews Marissa's. She's got to put Danielle number 1 in one place, and then she's got to put Marissa review number 2 in another place for Dr. Revis or for me, whoever's class you're in. Okay, come on down, Dr. Revis. Scroll all the way down. Okay, these are, okay, these.
I think I have to go to grade.
You're up there, right. These are for grade. Okay.
I think I have to go to grade book.
Yeah,
No.
no. Well, you can go to grade book, but go to the calendar. No, you just go to your calendar. I'm going to show you where. Go to the calendar and move to next Tuesday. That would be the 10th, right?
Right.
Next Tuesday would be the 10th. So come on down to 5:00 p.m. Do you see? That tells you that it's what is due. Now click on the first one, peer review number 1. Click on that, Dr. Revis. This is where you attach peer review number 1 to submit for a grade for Dr. Revis if you're in her class. Come out of that, Dr. Revis. Go to over here to peer review number 2. This is where your second one will go.
And this is the grade. This is for
right.
Dr. Stephan and I.
This is for us. Now, your peers, it's going to help them with accomplishing the work that they're doing. It's going to help you with finishing your work. But for us, you get an actual grade from Dr. Revis and me. Based on our classes, you'll get up to 50 points. So your goal should be, I want to get my 50 points the first time. You don't get a second chance on this. So remember, you've got to do your best the first time that you submit it. Okay. And again,
now let's go to Sunday.
Okay.
The 8th.
Go to the 8th. And scroll down to 6:00 p.m. Okay. What is due? AAPSL Task 1 draft is due this coming Sunday. Click on that, Dr. Revis. This is where you submit it.
And look right here. You only have 2 attempts. Now, if Dr. Stedman and I give you feedback, you need to do that feedback. It's not up for discussion.
Okay. Now, Dr. Revis, that means that they've got to submit it to us because we're going to review it and we're going to grade it. Now, look at that. It says attempts. That means that you're going to get a second attempt with Dr. Revis and me to be able to resubmit this. Again, I'm looking at them. Danielle, you may submit yours to us because you're going to send it to your peers at the same time. You're going to put this in the discussion place for the peers to look at your work. But you're going to submit it to us. So we're going to give you feedback. Now, if your peers tell you something, it should be effective enough you can use it, but you may not use it. But if I tell you something or Dr. Revis tells you something, then you have no choice but to use it unless you see that we're wrong and you reach out to us and you ask us, why did you do so and so if you don't understand it? But for the most part, we're going to be right on this because we've done it a million times. And if we tell you that it needs to be fixed or changed, you need to fix it or you need to change it. And the first time that Danielle gets it back, She may get 30 out of 50 because there's things that she's got to correct. She gets one more chance on this to get her full 50 points. Okay? You will get
But
one
Dr.
chance on
Stedman,
this.
when does Danielle have to get that revision in?
Okay? She cannot wait until the next, as soon as she can, no later than probably that Thursday. You're going to, you're going to get this. This is going to be, but probably no later than that Thursday, after we've had class on Tuesday. Wouldn't you think so, Dr. Revis?
Yeah, if you don't get it by Thursday, you're going to get behind.
You're going to get behind,
Now,
so you've got to get it to us.
the goal is that you turn in your best, even though it says draft, you turn in your best work. That way, you've just got little things to fix. You're not got big things to fix. And very rarely do I not require people to fix some things on this first task.
Right.
But by the time you get to your third and fourth, sometimes I just 50 and go ahead, you're ready to submit for final grade. That's right.
Right. Now, Danielle, it may be, almost perfect the first time. It may be. And if it is, we're going to tell you to fix what you need to fix, but still send it back for us a review. But we're going to clear you. And once we say you're cleared, you can go ahead and submit it for, if it's cleared, you can submit it for a final grade. Then you're through. You don't have to wait. And you can go on and move on to the next task once we clear you. When Dr. Revis says to her students, you are cleared to move on to task 2 of the AAPSL, that means that it's cleaned up, you submit it for a final grade, and you move on to task 2. You don't have to wait. Okay?
Okay.
Does all that make sense, everybody? Does it make sense? Okay, good. And again, remember we're going to read, this is recorded. You can always go back and you can look, you can fast forward to this section and you can revisit this recording, if you need to see what we've talked about again. That's the whole purpose in putting the recording under module 2, so you can refer back to it. Okay, Dr. Revis? I can't hear you, Dr. Revis.
I'm sorry. This calendar is awesome. If you have a question when something's due, go to this calendar. It spells it out for you. Okay.
Okay, you don't have to search in a lot of places for stuff.
No. And you can drop it right there.
And guys, I know it's late, but we still got one more thing that we've got to talk about. And this won't always be the case. It won't always be the case, but we have to do it right now. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have to do this to get you in the right place. So if you'll bear with us, just one more time, then I'm going to pull up. Okay, in your course shell, you're going to find a section called Clinical Internship Resources. I'm going to click on this. I want you to look at your internship requirements. This is in there. You can read it, but I want you to point out something. When you look at this, you scroll on down. This does not apply to you. The 20-month, 5-semester program does not apply to you. Go all the way down. Let me see. Scroll down to where it says in yellow, the MSA 12-month, 3-semester Master of Arts degree program. Okay, this is important. You have to have this semester 200 hours, 200 hours in the fall, 200 hours in the spring, and 100 hours in the summer of internship hours. What do they look like? Fall semester, this is where you are now. 100 of those hours will come from evidence and artifact work for the AAPSL and the APTEL. What you're doing now, what we've talked about now, leading that PLC, doing that work, you're going to get hours from that, and then you're going to get hours from the AAPSL. Let's look down here. From the AAPSL, what are we going to give you? Okay, for task 1, we're going to give you 10 hours for leading the PLC and the work you have to do for task 1. For task 2, 10 hours, task 3, 10 hours, task 4, 10 hours, task 5, 10 hours. That is 50 hours. And then we're going to give you 5 hours for the competency folio work that we're going to talk about later on. That's 55 hours of those hours. And then we're going to do the same thing with the AAPTEL. But right now, and that the remaining 100 hours are to reflect the following. You will have 70 hours from direct leadership opportunities outside of the work with the AAPSL. It's not with the AAPSL. This is leadership work in the school. Leadership activities. 20 hours. You can not have, it should say a maximum of, you cannot have any more than 20 hours to come directly from technical knowledge and opportunities, and 10 hours are to come directly from supervision opportunities. If we see more than 10 hours, then we're going to send it back to you because you shouldn't have more than 10 hours. The most of your hours has to come from leadership opportunities. And this, you see that it repeats itself for the next semesters. Now, let me stop that and show you what that needs to look like. And here's where you will find that. Clinical Internship Resources. Okay, this is your log. Since my battery's running low, let me make sure that I'm plugged in.
And guys, your CC 1 should go over this in great depth. And we'll take questions too, but we just wanted to try to get you started so you can start keeping your log.